like I said, my name is Duncan Hewitt. This is really a sort of potted history of albino igil. I've been using Lightwave since '94, which is quite a long time ago. And it's just happened to stick with me throughout the years. I can't shake it off. It's like a small puppy dog, it just stays there. It's always been the go-to tool that I've used. I've used other tools over the years. But I thought the best way of describing it is how I've used it in the past and then how we've used it in albino since we started up in 2004. Started albino igil, as I said, in 2004. We're a studio with a strong 3D specialism. Now, we're down as talking about Lightwave in product design or Lightwave in multimedia, and none of those are strictly true. We are 3D designers, the two core artists are 3D designers. We did industrial design. We don't specialize in product design. That's not what we sell ourselves as. We class ourselves as 3D designers, which is a much broader term, and we rely on our knowledge of manufacturing processes and the love of 3D in general to help us achieve whatever goal our clients ask of us, as long as we feel that it's within our grasp and it's something we can cope with. So I studied industrial design for a fair few years. Back in '94, formed a partnership with another graduate on the same course. And at the time, we weren't sure which direction to point the shiny new company in. So we chose two pieces of software, one of which was a CAD package, which made sense. We were product designers, we might end up doing products. And the other one was a piece of software called Lightwave 3.5, which the friend at the time dragged me down to the local Blockbusters, made me watch Babylon 5 pilot episode. I thought, that's pretty cool. We can do that. And we were going to use Lightwave for the 3D product visualization. So we thought we could design it, we can visualize it. Sorted. Luckily for me, I was the one who ended up learning Lightwave. It happened to be my student house that Lightwave was sitting in, and I sat there every hour of the day learning it. And that side took off. But we increasingly found the ability to produce 3D images quickly opened more doors than we envisaged. The jump to Lightwave 5, so this is '95, this is a year after we started, came with it. We moved to PCs. And by then we were creating sales merchandise artwork for the likes of, as you can see, Lego, Cadbury's, Manor Bakeries, who the Mr. Kipling people. They needed a mince pie producing in June, which is not a particularly good time of year to get hold of a mince pie, even if you make thousands of things. So it was for their autumn sales literature. They hadn't started manufacturing. The client turned up who printed all their stuff and said, can you help us out? We promptly, after a day, turned around a little mince pie picture, saved them, and we kept them on as a regular client from there on. Then, obviously, product visualization, just it snowballed because that's the stuff that we knew. People got to know us for doing that sort of thing. This is, back in '96, we're probably still on Lightwave 5 at this stage. This is days before Ray Diversity, and we were relying on, and some of the old guys will know Whirly's plugins, Gaffer and Bloom. We were using that. Renders would take forever, but it helped us get products to market for the client sooner than they actually manufactured, or they could test out products that they hadn't actually designed, or they designed on paper, and that was all. But they could try out things like texture variations and paint variations, drop them into certain situations to show what massing would look like, that kind of thing. And Lightwave also allowed us to sort of depict things like the textures as well, rather than photograph, because the paints hadn't been come up with. They would match the paints then to what we'd come up with in terms of Lightwave. So it was all good fun stuff. It was also the days before subdivision surfacing, so this is all a personal project for spline patch modeling, just to test out how well it worked. It was exciting. It was slow going though. We picked up a company called Doors Cycles as a client. They were about to be bought out by a Dutch company, and they got a new MD in who was sort of overseeing the whole thing. We were put in charge of the colours and graphics for their entire range of bikes. There's over 50 odd bikes every year. And then also they had the specialist bikes like this cat bike, Jaguar have bikes, sort of franchise tie-ins. The managing director at the time saw us applying graphics to a bike's down tube, modelled in Lightwave as a demo, and he hired us then and there, because that was great to be able to see what it would look like on the tube in a real situation. But the caveat he gave us was that we should up our rate. We were too cheap, which was a nice thing to hear. Doors did well from that, and they were still a client several years later when I decided to move on with my career. I became truly bitten by the Lightwave bug and the use of 3D in design, in general design. So I left the partnership to pursue a career in pure 3D. And the choice was either TV, film, or games. And as there were so many opportunities in the Midlands at the time, games was the obvious choice. I moved from Birmingham to Derby to work as a games artist, and was pretty chuffed to find out there that I could still use Lightwave for games content creation. By this time, the dizzy heights of Lightwave 7 were upon us. Lightwave, obviously, as some people know, and Simon Smalley definitely knows, it's perfect. The poly count, you get to see the nitty-gritty of the polygons you're working with. You're not hiding behind layers of different functions you've added to basic geometry to get something you want. You're pushing and pulling points around, and you can quickly get the object you're after. I also used other packages off the shelf and in-house as part of the workflow. But Lightwave, for me and others, was still a choice when it came to modelling assets. Quite a few people used it back then. This was called a bat beast. It was modelled and textured in Lightwave. And then we go on to other, so 2001 we're up to now, obviously. Still a fair time ago. Then we got the old franchise Buffy the Vampire Slayer. So this was, Lightwave was used for the character modelling and not the texturing in these cases. So the good old Spike and the evil lady beforehand. And then for people who like Spyro the Dragon, we used it for Otto the Otter in Spyro Hero's Tale. And Peggy, these are the two I did. I'm sure it was used in other characters as well. So 3 years in the games industry, I got the urge to go back to a more varied 3D diet. So I started Albino 2004, 10 years after being first introduced to Lightwave. And the first software I invested in obviously was Lightwave 8. And at the time, the housing market was booming. It was an easy time to get into self-employment. You just said that you could do a picture of a house, it was in 3D, and developers would go, okay, that's great. So with these, initially we offered design and illustration for various uses because we didn't know which direction the company would go in. It was internet, graphic design, video. The market eventually dictated the direction. And the two areas we first explored was ArcViz, as a housing boom at the time, so it meant there was a demand for it via mainly ad agencies and also product viz, which was still there in the background. So here we'd, HD Instance, the plugin, we started to use that around this time, just things like blades of grass and trees and what have you. And that was fantastic for sort of getting to the next level. This is Pride Park, Derby. We've done a few products, a few houses, commercial buildings rather there. Just flick through these rather quickly because they're all pretty much of a muchness. Nothing special about them. The more switched on agencies also used us for general illustration. That started taking off. It was great. It gave us more freedom in terms of design and allowed us to sort of flex our creative muscles slightly. They could see the benefits of CGI, the freedom it gave them, and the cost savings in terms of time and lead times over the more traditional routes such as photography and hand illustration. The steady stream of ArcViz and the more creative projects gave us a solid base to grow forwards. So here we were working for via an ad agency for Ferroli boilers. They did a lot of installation shots where we just created the visuals for marketing campaigns or ad campaigns, web use. I think IAS lights by the looks of it had just been introduced as well. This is a local company, or the Dutch company Drakker, make cables. They wanted a catalogue cover. So this is one of their typical installation systems, which we modelled and rendered. Did quite a few of those as well. We also did the Drakker range of cables too. That pops up later. Another Ferroli boiler shot, just to show it in situ. And then in 2009, this little chappie happened. He probably won't. He does. D-Link, little Sid the Spaceman, popped up. We had a brief to move Sid from a concept sketch to a 3D character model that would be used throughout D-Link Europe to sell their products online. This is the final version of Sid with was that the early version beforehand? Yeah, it is the early version. That's the early version. I'm going to go back again. The order. You've got one version of Sid, you haven't got an early version. This is the version we had. And the idea was to come up with sort of a round comfy shape that people could identify with and be happy with. But with SID, we created that assets for a lot of web animation. So we'd split layers down to flash animation layers, so people could animate for the web, and a lot of viral campaigns. I jump around to Dracker again. So we modelled quite a lot of their range, and again, moving from traditional photography to CGI meant we could put cables in situations that you wouldn't do with photography, it would take far too long. By then, we'd modelled 40 or 50 cable types that you could just drop in as and when you wanted to change colours for various clients, put into these situations where it was a bit more creative in terms of what you're offering. So obviously these were used in the underground, so you'd see this on the underground picture advertising what was there underneath your feet at the time. Click. And Sid got joined by Terence the Cat, so again, I think dealing with quite a large client for us for a couple of years till he ran his course. Through word of mouth, more work came in. We haven't really advertised, it tends to snowball once you start going. And this point, 2010-ish, we started to use fellow lightwave artists to help out with larger projects, and eventually brought in a freelancer regularly for graphic design, whom I've worked with for around 15 years anyway, and I've known him before then. And that's the way we've worked, through making contact with various like-minded companies and individuals. You soon enter a network where you use their skills and they use yours, and symbiotic relationships develop. Every time I see this, I want to sing Queen's song. I want to break free. It was inspiration, I think. The lightwave community is so friendly that it's easy to find other lightwave artists to work with. And for instance, instant camaraderie, even before you start work with someone, you've often met them through forums or just group chats, that kind of thing. As our networks of contacts grew, new skills could be added to what we offered. For example, we work with another lightwave artist locally who's a whiz with post-production work, so he specialises in After Effects and knows Lightwave. We specialise in Lightwave and know a bit of After Effects, and the two go well. So he in turn is part of a production company that we help out with modelling animation. And the beauty of being small, and that's how we've kept ourselves, is we can adapt quite quickly. And in 2008, we had to. From the inception of albino igil, and bear with me on this one, predicting a worsening economic situation on the horizon, which later became known as the Great Recession, we decided not to take on staff or expand albino in a traditional physical sense, but to have a model that could grow or shrink as needed by using like-minded co-workers. The model remains to this day. We call it the modern cottage industry. With the way the internet has grown, technology gives more power to individuals, and this way of working has proven to be fantastic for us. With the internet, email, Skype, video conferencing and screen sharing and cloud data storage, small's definitely beautiful. This is relevant to Lightwave, believe it or not, and part of the reason it continues to be our main 3D package. Here you can see the hutch, that orange circle, but we can only handle certain size projects. There are 4 core main members. So we've got graphics, product, 3D CGI, and then a project manager to keep us all intact and where we should be. When we need additional help, say specialist photography or extra 3D hands, post-production, that kind of thing, then we look to our freelancers or fellow small businesses to provide the service. Sometimes we handle the project, sometimes we give it away and we plug into them handling the project. We're not precious about who controls what, as long as the project heads in the right direction for the client and we get the results needed. The secret is in finding the right people to network with. So for example, with here, the little orange dots on the outside are our 3D freelancers that can plug into us and help us with 3D, or we can provide non-3D stuff or extra 3D to 3D freelancers. The end client is the guy on the outside who's blue and he's happy. I don't know why he's blue, he should be a different colour. But we also plug into creative agencies who are larger, who then can then add on sort of add benefits to the end client as well. So there's a lot of backwards and forwards of information, and with the internet, it's fantastic. This flexible way of approaching projects was at the heart of our decision to make albino as it is today. Our software needed to be as flexible, and this is where Lightwave stepped up to the mark. You can say that way back at the start in '94, it was pure luck that I was pointed in the direction of Lightwave, but it's grown in a way that's perfect for our needs now. For a small company, it's very cost effective to buy into, as people have said, and to upgrade. It's great. You get a lot of bang for your buck when you're starting out. Compared to other 3D packages, you don't need a technical director to get the most out of it. It's all there, all-encompassing, and it's not difficult to learn. Like our company, there's enough inside Lightwave to handle most projects quickly and to a professional level. Also, like us, there are specialist plugins when you need the extra oomph that you can always buy into as and when you need. So your HD instance obviously is no longer really sought after now, mostly because of the built-in plugins, but things like Turbulence FD, Lightwave CAD. But the big thing for us was the community you get when you use Lightwave. It's a cliche, but the help you can get online and through fellow artists is amazing, and it's never something I underestimate. With the recession came great opportunity for us. At this stage, we had all the in-house skills to offer that you see on the screen, but we didn't offer the 3D design element fully. 3D CGI, 2D design, they were our main thing. Oh. Like that, there you go. Right, we'd created elements to help with product visualization through the years, unknowingly and because it's what we knew. Such as these banisters for the stonemason on the left. A stonemason somewhere in Staffordshire makes bespoke staircases for people who can afford them. And often they're just built in a 3D modeling package he uses, like, such as Rhino or whatever. We'd take the files in. He wanted a visual to help sell the concept on his website or in his literature. And we designed things like some banisters. We'd put banisters on. And before you know it, the clients are then asking for the banisters to be built via having seen them attached to the staircase. So here we've got a Murano glass sort of ovals within a chrome finish. I don't particularly like the colour combination he's chosen, but that's what the client wanted, and that's what they went for. So for our clients, it was an added bonus that we were giving a bit of product design away with just doing the visuals. And it's something that we did anyway. Here we've got some stairs somewhere in a place called Kirkham. And again, the stair style changed, but the banister style continued. They took it and moved it into another style staircase. Product viz still made up a large proportion of the works. This is a ship's hull cleaner we built and animated for a local company. And these images of, some people may have heard of it, the Derby Arm project. It's a local engineering project, which is an amazing bit of engineering done by an old Rolls-Royce chap, to allow narrowboats to move from the canal system to the River Derwent in the centre of Derby. So they needed visuals to sort of show what it would look like from various angles, to be based on Pride Park if they get the go-ahead. We've been working on this project for about 7 or 8 years now. And this brings me to our first, I'm going to do 3 client case studies of how clients typically use us. This one is Thornton's. Most people who are local will have heard of Thornton's. Most people in English will have heard of Thornton's. It's the local chocolate manufacturer. When Thornton's first approached us, we were using Lightwave 9.6. I'm keeping a tab of where we are with them so you know what technology we're using at the time. They asked us if we could produce a couple of renders of Mr. Men for the following day for a meeting, out of the blue. And it was Lightwave speed that saw us through that. We were supplied with flat drawings on the afternoon, an example of a similar product that was actually a chocolate thing sent through the courier. And after a few hours, we delivered Little Miss Sunshine and Mr. Bump later that evening, hitting the deadline with time to spare, which was great for us because it meant Thornton's liked us and showed we could actually do it. So the next project for them came around just before the following Christmas, ironically for a product destined to hit the shelves 12 months later. They were also flat concept drawings from the artwork department that needed producing in 3D to help the chocolate mould makers visualize the shapes needed from them, up to the point where they used us. They would have a 2D sketch that would be sent to Germany to make the moulds, which would then come back and may or may not look quite like you expected them to look. So this gave them more control over what product they would end up with at the end of the day. Our knowledge of manufacturing processes helped at this stage, so we could foresee any potential issues with pulling a cast from a mould. And we could allow for that when producing the 3D version. And despite the 12-month product lead time, our own lead time was a couple of weeks. It was a lot tighter, but it was no problem. So this is Mini Ronnie, the reindeer, you can probably tell. And this is obviously Big Ronnie, the reindeer, front and back. And then we had packaging, Father Christmas, or Santa as he was known. And Mini Santa, and his packaging as well. So we would try various packaging styles out, supply the artwork flat, pop it on. And then with the technique sorted, when the chocolates based on Raymond Riggs, the snowman, needed visualizing, we obviously said yes, please, we'll do those. So we got the Snow Dog to tie in for the launch of the animated film there as well. We've been talking about solid modelling at this stage. That was the next logical step. We've been talking about it for a while, but we hadn't used it for chocolates. And unfortunately, we can't show you the project after this, because we do have a lot of NDA still. But the next project, we've used solid modelling. It's far more creative, and it uses solid modelling from lightwave models for the first time, which has really helped streamline the design process, especially when it comes to sort of pre-marketing, sort of feedback, that kind of thing. And next is Eurocell. Again, another local Derbyshire company. These are a typical manufacturing company, multi-million pounds, plastic extrusion group, headquarters in Derbyshire, several hundred outlets nationwide. They make a lot of plastic things. I think I heard the 90% of houses use their product in them. They specialise in products for the house building trade with several thousand lines. And again, they've got a great internal design studio. And this is where we found that we have been used, is where somebody has got a design studio, but they don't have the 3D specialism. We can plug into that quite happily. And we've also found that since the sort of the downturn, the recession, whatever you want to call it, that we picked up because a lot of larger companies sourced the direct artist as opposed to going through an ad agency. So we would pick up people directly in terms of big clients. We were approached a few years ago by them to produce, this is the first range, it's a very simple screw. It's quite boring. They wanted several hundred of these things doing, which was great in terms of bread and butter work. The main reason for them was to consolidate the style of presentation. So we could do everything from the same camera angle with the same lighting setup, and it would go onto the website and all look the same. So if you're a supplier or a buyer, you could go in and buy the bit, and it would all look the same essentially. And then we went on to, there's mainly for online and print these were, then we went on to illustrations of typical installations, so installers and fitting guides, that kind of thing. Extrusion profiles typically supplied as DXF files, which we either imported directly or we used a 3D conversion software, Polytrans or Adobe Illustrator. That works quite well to get things into Lightwave, whichever worked best. Some of the 3D moldings we were supplied with 3D CAD files, which helped. It was a rarity. Sometimes there's nothing but a 2D drawing with dimensions or a physical example would land on your lap and you'd get out your ruler and measure the thing. Gradually, as Eurocell's design studio got a handle on what we could do, the briefs became less black and white. It started out with adding CGI elements to existing photographs, like this little vent thing they wanted sticking in. Then we progressed to mixing even more CGI with studio photography, such as the garden carpet shot. HD Instance, obviously, as I mentioned before, has already made an introduction to itself. And like with CAD as well, we started using about this time. That's proved invaluable as a modelling plugin, saving us probably around 50% of the modelling time for certain projects, maybe even more in certain cases. And it's one plugin we just couldn't do without now. This was a typical studio shot where you go along and you take your measurements of the room being shot in. The doors are there's a green screen behind, and you essentially take your light placement readings, match them as close as you can in Lightwave, and introduce a CGI element for the garden being pulled in. Eventually we started to produce entire scenes in CGI, showcasing new products that were yet to be released, or to show off newly released products that needed a hero installation project. They hadn't been used yet in anger. So with this, it was a range of conservatories. And again, I think we had 4 or 5 days to get a few of these visuals out. This is probably the first building that was pure Lightwave CAD from start to finish. Sort of forced myself into using it. Before that, we were just mainly using it for the snap tools, that kind of thing. And yep, now we're on Lightwave. All of these, they're Lightwave 11 and beyond. Instances have arrived. Grass, pebbles, trees, daisies, you name it, we threw it in the mix. It was fantastic. It was a real lifesaver for us. It was great. We also started using HDR lighting as well, which greatly helped with render time, especially for interiors. As you heard previously, your light gamut is so great. You can render lower, which takes less time to render, and then up your gamut afterwards, or your light band, as it were, so to sort of bring the lightness back in. So you've got far more control. So again, always render out as EXR and use HDR lighting. It's wonderful. This is another Skypod interior. Actually borrowed the courtyard from a shot in the barn conversion earlier to drop outside. And this is one from last year again. Again, typical, the Skypod's the hero product. They need shots to go with it. We also, I should point out, we use Dennis Pontonia's SunSky plugin for a lot of our exterior stuff. To use pure HDR can take a long time, and you don't always get the benefits for exterior stuff. So the SunSky, we tend to use that in terms of getting the general lighting going, and then we'll put an invisible inverted sphere inside with HDR attached to that, or just a normal image map that will affect things like clouds and what have you. And the clouds will show through with that as well. It's a technique we found tends to work. An FBX import as well. I mean, thank you for the Lightweight group for introducing a better FBX import, because that's made getting library stuff in a lot quicker as well, and a lot easier. We still can't get everything in because of the nature of the format, but it does help an awful lot. And this is the third case study. It's a company called Offshore Simulation Center, or Simulator Center, should I say. And they drew us into the design engineering field. We call them OSC. The design director of OSC, now the CEO, knew of us thanks to Gary, who's in the audience, links with him from university back in his product design days. OSC are based in, I'm going to pronounce it wrong, Ålesund in Norway. And it's a joint venture between Farstad Shipping, Rolls-Royce Marine, Marintech, and Ålesund University. They design and provide simulators for, they call it anchor handling and platform supply vessel operations. Basically, on-sea and sub-sea vessel simulators. So if you've got a ship or an oil rig or an ROV, they make a simulator that you can sit in, and it's a physical thing. It's huge. It's as big as this room, and you'll get 8 guys in it, and you look out and all the BC there. The idea is that crew members can train up the various simulators, train in the various simulators rather, without the costs associated with real offshore operations. So crane operators can sit in their simulator, which is a full field of view, and the bridge crew would be in their simulator and can see the virtual crane cab in the distance being operated by the chap in the room next door. And it's all linked together. It can be linked in the same building, it can be linked across the world. It saves them a ton of money, saves costly mistakes as well. In turn, a supply vessel crew approaching the oil rig could be in another simulator, and they can all interact in a scenario for training purposes. So it's pretty cool stuff. Anyway, he knew we had the technical knowledge in-house to prove an engineering concept they'd devised for a moving bed platform, which was to be used in a crane CAD simulator. That's the bit on the ground that wobbles around. It was this point that being a smaller company proved beneficial. With some serious thought, a quick chat, it was decided to invest in a solid modelling software and move Albino Igil into designing the products we'd so far been asked to visualise. We invested in, I won't say the name, but it's a generic 3D solid modelling package. We proved the concept for the base using the new solid modelling software. And this is just a typical thing. I mean, it's very bland and boring and low res. I pulled it off the files, but we just proved that gimbals wouldn't lock and it would work. In here there's an invisible platform. You can't see it, there's a platform on top moving up and down. Using Lightwave, we then placed our base under a quickly modelled standing cab design for visual purposes. And here you can see we've modelled the cab, chair, armrest, control surfaces, all based on existing equipment. And this was still very much a prototype stage in Norway. The university had come up with the gimbal design. They had no ways of sort of proving it would work. We managed that so we could take the project forward for them. This is a view out the front from behind the operator's cab. So it's all quite basic stand-in stuff at the moment. And there's a typical one in situ. So that's what a standalone crane cab simulator would look like. The operator would only see the projection screen, which uses multiple cameras at the top and the bottom project screen, and overlapping images to create this sort of 360 field of view, or 270 field of view in this case. We then started to design the crane cab itself. That's probably, yes. In a solid modelling package again, and Lightwave started to creep into the pipeline, as it does if you've got it. For example, we quickly created a scene with critical dimensions, such as operator eye level, and produced animations indicating field of view options like that, so we could get a feel for how much sphere we needed around the crane cab. We'd use character models whose sizes were based on the relevant percentile ranges to get an understanding of critical dimensions we'd need to take into consideration for the ergonomics of designs. Here we'd started designing the armrests as well. We moved into that arena, so you want to know where things like buttons would sit. There are standards anyway you need to abide by that tend to be used by the major manufacturers. We rigged the character, this time using Maestro back then, so we could test out aspects of arm reach, head movement, field of view, that kind of thing. And yeah, you can see shots during the testing of the new armrest controls that we'd come up with. The computer model helps us locate ideal positions for joysticks, buttons, as I've mentioned, making sure you don't bump into anything by mistake. As part of the pipeline, at first we'd export CAD data into Lightwave and produce visuals for design feedback. That's where it starts. And then you get to more involved shots from different angles, sometimes just for marketing, just to show off what's going on underneath. You can see the little hedgehog that we try to stick in things every now and again, just under the footplate. And eventually these would then be polished up and used for marketing materials, so products could be launched and orders taken before installations have begun. So already it's designed and ready for manufacture, and whilst it's being manufactured, sales guys could go out selling the product. This is a version showing we dabbled with corian as a material for the armrests rather than flat sheet metal, but we turned it down again because it was a bit rogue as material. You're not quite sure where it's going to go. And again from behind. And so as part of our remit, we brought the manufacturing of the crane cab and armrests to the East Midlands. So bear in mind the company is based in Norway. We're based in the East Midlands. The idea was to get everything made in Norway, but it seemed easier to have it here where we were so we could project manage the build. The electronics were shipped from Norway. The motors were sent from their manufacturer. I think they may have been Finnish. I can't remember. The units were assembled here. Once they were assembled, they were shipped to Perth in Australia, where they now form part of what's known as the Farstad Shipping Offshore Simulation Centre. It's a hell of a mouthful, but basically it's the largest integrated simulation centre of its kind in the world. It was opened by somebody important, I'm sure, and they brought all the offshore simulators together in one building where you can go and train. Lightwave wasn't lazy in all of this. At the same time, we're doing the product design side of things. We're also doing the CGI side of things to help sell the internals of the development. So we help by providing visuals of the various simulators in place. This is the engine room in Perth. It doesn't look much like a ship's engine room, but I'm sure it is. This is the ROV station. This is what's called the teacup solo, because it's the wall is half a teacup, not a true teacup. The true teacup is this thing, which is, actually it's only 3/4 of a teacup. The full teacup looks like a teacup. But here you've got 2 level, full-size bridge houses. So you've got 4 operators. You'll have people standing in as well, looking out. And basically everybody can you see the same shot, or they can split the screen so the top people see the top half, bottom people see the bottom half, and use it as a double installation. Whilst the Perth project kept us busy, we were also getting involved with the ArcViz side of things, and OSC were arranging for a new HQ building in Ayleston, so Rolls-Royce Marine were moving there, OSC were moving there, a few other companies, and they asked us to visualise the entrance area. So working with their architect, we'd take their drawings and we'd produce a quick visual of the complete dome. Here you can see there are 2 levels of bridge simulator, plus a viewing platform below, which could show anything you wanted as well. Our crane cabs are in the background. There's little spheres. And this is the final building that was last year it was finished. So that's finally going. Shame you can't see through the dome, but I suppose that would defeat the point of the object. The next step was to create a concept building for them for a proposed simulation centre elsewhere in the world. We were lucky enough to be given a free rein on this. It's a blue sky project. We began with pencil and paper, as you do, but quickly moved to Lightwave to block model various model shapes. And the design requirement was the building should be able to house 2 14-metre diameter, these guys, spherical simulators, each having 3 floors internally and an office area for training stations. Except the version we were coming up with has a bar area at the top, so you can sit in your comfy chair at a bar, and real-time, basically images are projected around you. They could be from real-time cameras based somewhere else in the world and then relayed, so you could be sat in a rainforest or wherever, really. We ended up blocking out 3 shapes. The curve, the pill, the prow, all based on the spherical nature of the simulators and all the vessels they were simulating. So this is the curve, and We just used to get a feel for the areas we were looking at. So if you're from ground level, looking up at the sphere with the balustrades. So they're quite rough and visual, but these things we just knock out really quickly to get a feel for things. This is the pill shape. So again, we've got 2 simulators either end, a nondescript thing in the middle which would be the office area, and walkways around everything. So you can appreciate it if you're actually there. This was the prow. Quite obvious where the inspiration comes from, I guess. This was the one we ended up moving forwards with. That's from the first floor. And eventually the prow concept was pushed forwards, which led to these final visuals. As far as Lightwave was concerned, we made good use of the virtual darkroom. I'll point that one out as well. It's a great little plugin or feature. And here, again, we had free reign, so we've got a modern sculpture in the foreground based on rock strata. You can't tell, but the sea it's on the coastline, so the sea's here. We made use of things like the walkways produce a natural shadowing feature in the high sun, so you don't get the sunlight kicking in. And again, because you've got the sloping glass as well, that also helps, but lets the sun right through come winter time. These are shots inside showing the floor simulators. They've got 360-degree walking simulators at the top, where you can actually walk on those little grids that move around. You can so deck operators can use their system. Below you've got the bridge, and then the crane cab. So you've basically got all 3 types of operatives for a ship or a rig in one dome. And then interior shots of the various simulator stations that they produce with their control stations. And then that's the final shot. Again, just another pretty shot of the outside of the building, really, at sunset. Virtual darkroom again, quite heavily with a film. That we use some sort of film gradation in there as well. That about wraps it up from me. I hope it's been useful into getting an insight how we use it. And thanks for listening.